The stage is set for Prime Minister Narendra Modi's first ever visit of an Indian Prime Minister to Ukraine. And with me is Pavlo Klimkin, the dynamic young former Foreign Minister of Ukraine. Sir, welcome on India Today.
Good morning here in Kiev.
Good morning, sir. Your expectations of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Ukraine?
We are looking forward to having him here in Kiev. And it should not be just a visit. It should be the visit because it's the first one of a global player. And I mean, India can and should do more because playing big is something India can do every day. Playing smart, India can do every day. Now it's time to play global. And it's, for me, part of the Indian DNA to have rules also for the way how the wars were carried out in India. It's not typical for anyone else in the world. You are unique here. It's part of your mental heritage and it's your mentality now. You have to play it for the world. You have to play global. You have to become a global player. It's the only way.
Very interesting. It cannot be just a visit, it has to be the visit. And this special broadcast comes to you from a very historic site in Ukraine. We're pretty close to the Ministry of External Affairs. We're also very close to one of the most ancient religious places, a church here in Ukraine, in Kiev. Now, how does this become the visit? What do people in Ukraine expect? In your appreciation, what would Ukraine want from the Prime Minister's visit?
For those who are watching us, it's one of the most sacred places on Kiev. It's actually the center of the ancient Kiev. And we are looking forward to having the Prime Minister here, talking not about the steps, but about the strategies. India is now absolutely paramount for the non-Western world, but it's even more. For me, India is the biggest democracy in the world. So India belongs to both worlds, to non-Western and Western, to the democratic sense, having democratic mentality in its roots. So to be a really spiritual parrot, how it's written in your constitution, you have to elevate your engagement in the world. And here Ukraine is exactly the case, to show that India was, is, and will be committed to the rules, will be committed to the international law, and is ready to play at the international stage to uphold all the rules. It's fundamentally important for the respect of India, of the Indian nation, but also showing that Indian unique history is playing also at the current world stage. It's fundamentally important. And this visit, if you want my sense, could be a game changer. Also for Ukraine, but especially for India, for the India's international role, not to be important in Asia. India is already important in Asia, but to be important in the world. It would be important also for the Indian quest to become not just important and active part of the United Nations, but in the future, the permanent member of the Security Council. Show what you can, and people will respect you. It's exactly the message.
So it's not the process, it's what emerges from that process. It's the strategy that emerges for peace. Many people are talking about perhaps a ceasefire, but given the current situation and Ukraine's very audacious, inroads into Kursk, how do you look at that? And after what's happened there, you heard what President Zelensky said at Dnipro. Does it indicate that we are heading towards a ceasefire, or Ukraine wants higher ground or some more territory to negotiate, or do you look at it in a different way?
Ceasefire is not a strategy, like you've said. Ceasefire is a step. And if we take this step, what next? How Russia gonna be using this step to strengthen its potential, to keep our people, to keep our territory, to further threaten our efforts to restore our territorial integrity. So there should be a clear strategy behind it, not to stop fighting, because we just showed what we could do and what we can do also in Kursk. And for us, is not about getting into the Russian territory for the sake of occupation. It's fundamentally different from the Russian approach. It's about preventing all the strikes coming from the Russian territory to the ours. And with the gliding bombs falling on our kids, we need to do more, because it's about lives, because it's about emotion. And I believe your prime minister should understand it, because when he was exactly in Moscow, it was a heinous attack on our children's hospital. And it blew our mind, but it also blew our hearts. You should understand it. It's not about pictures. Here, for the people, it was like losing part of our lives. So it's important now that the Prime Minister coming here, talking to us, showing his support, and started really playing global, because he has a lot of impact. We clearly recall his words. It's not time for war. It was really important. Now it's about next steps. And let's discuss these next steps in a couple of days on the 23rd. And it's also symbolic that the Prime Minister is coming to Kiev, to Ukraine. A very special day. It's the eve of our Independence Day, but it's about Ukrainian Flag Day. It's very special for us, like it's very special for the millions of Indians. It's very special understanding their history of very successful anti-colonial fight. Of course, it's different in our case, but it's also about big empire breaking up. It's the logic which is important to understand here. Talking here to people, and what I would advise, of course, it's about talking to the president, to other guys, but it's also about talking to Ukrainians, to get this emotion, and the Prime Minister will definitely appreciate it. This important emotion, we'll get it with him, and we'll have a kind of strategic thinking how India, as a global player, not just a big player, can
Absolutely.
and should engage.
A global play on the world stage, and there are a lot of expectations from India when it comes to the Russia Ukraine conflict, when it comes to the war that's happening, also when it comes to reconstruction of Ukraine. And that again is something where India and Ukraine together can play a very big role. Is that something that you think that the two heads of state and government will talk about, reconstruction?
My message: India has to be there for the recovery. India has a lot of respect. India has a very good perception. We need to massively expand our business ties. We need to massively expand the presence of the Indian business, and through Ukraine, also in Europe, because we're going to become the member of the European Union now formally and officially. The negotiations have started. You will have a unique platform here for Ukraine, but also for the European Union. We have good cases. We have medicines. We have a lot of stuff.
Is defense an area where India and Ukraine can cooperate further? They have been cooperating on ship engines and aircraft engines and so much more.
We will. We will, because we have this unique experience, and you need it. With your sense of security, with your sense of security requirements, you need us. You need our experience, and we need you. And it's not just about ship engines, it's not just about planes, it's about the future. It's about drones. We are now number one on sea drones, for example. We are now number one on ground drones. Is something like drones the future? Definitely yes. So fundamentally, let's cooperate on the future. Let's cooperate on defense. And India has to diversify. We understand that India is still dependent on Russia. But if you become a really global player, you can't be dependent on just one country, and especially on Russia. You need to cooperate with everyone who is on a good side of history, and Ukraine is exactly the next step.
So, hope, anticipation, cooperation, not just in the field of defense, but drones. As former Foreign Minister Klimkin very effectively points out, Ukraine has shown remarkable achievements in sea drones and drones that strike at an adversary that may seem to be very, very superior. But let's for a moment, Minister, talk about reconstruction. Where does Ukraine see India, and what role does Ukraine see India play in the reconstruction of this place? And I don't just mean physical reconstruction, I also am hinting at emotional, mental reconstruction. Yoga and Ayurveda and mental health is something I believe where a lot of cooperation is being sought.
Absolutely. We can do a lot on the physical side about infrastructure, critical infrastructure, energy infrastructure. But it's also about people talking to people learning from each other, people understanding the depths of these mental practices, but also understanding a lot from Ukraine. And we are especially resilient during the war. If you talk to Ukrainians here on the streets, partly it's about uncertainty, partly is about people being tired, but never about fear. Let's learn from each other. I believe your case for the Indian spiritual culture and heritage about yoga, but it's more, it's yoga in a wider, expanded sense. You need to show your roots. You need to show your roots in the sense of rules which actually governed the Indian societies for how many? Probably for 5,000 years, even more. You need to explain India to the world. And Ukraine is actually the place to start. I mean, it's not about us, it's not about just high officials to define what could be done and what could not be done. It's about people coming together, it's about businessmen, it's about people, it's about civil society. It's a very strong civil society in India, it's a very strong civil society in Ukraine. Let's get them in a real touch and let's work like that.
Absolutely. For speaking to me here on India Today. So
Pleasure.
many thanks.
Pleasure. And for me, India, go forward in your global case to become a really positive player for the world, for the rule-based world, for the international law. You have the potential, you have to use it.
So, former Foreign Minister of Ukraine, Pavlo Klimkin, is very clear. India and Ukraine need to work together, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, in not just stopping this war, but on reconstruction of Ukraine and growth of both the countries together. Gaurav Sawant in Kiev, Ukraine, for India Today.
See you all in Ukraine.